Alright, good evening folks, it's Enforcer Matt and welcome back to another short war video, and today we have massive news coming out of Ukraine that the F16 jets that Ukraine was expecting to receive in June are actually going to arrive in just a couple of weeks, which is a little bit ahead of schedule, which is very good news because we are hearing some unfortunate news as well that Russia has launched a major offensive on the city of Kharkiv and the Ukrainian soldiers are defending that city very heroically, and we also are hearing more word that there is a major U.S. aid package of about $400 million that is going to be sent to Ukraine here in the near future. But with that, let's go ahead and jump right into our first post of the day, which goes to us on Twitter at It's the Enforcer. And like I said just a moment ago, the first F-16 fighter jets to be delivered from the West will arrive in Ukraine within just weeks, according to the Standard. And this is a very big news right here because with Russia planning their summer offensive, these F-16 jets are going to give Ukraine a massive edge over Russian forces, and we have Russia so panicked about it that they're making the nuclear threats. If these jets are to arrive in Ukraine, Russia says they're going to view that as a nuclear threat, even though that's total bogus. There's no nuclear threat whatsoever with the F-16s. Russia is very, very concerned that once Ukraine gets these F-16 fighter jets, that will give the Ukrainians air superiority over the Russians and could turn the tide of the war very quickly. And we do have some more news here about the F-16, and in this post from the Euromaidan Press, we see that Czechia delivers the first F-16 fighter jet simulator to Ukraine's Air Force, and Ukrainian pilots are now undergoing training on it, with 12 expected to be ready by the summer. So it seems like the F-16 operation has basically been put into full gear here, and it looks like it's going along very well. So we're very hopeful to see that by June of this year, which is just next month, it sounds like F-16s will be flying around the skies of Ukraine, and this time it's not just talk, it's probably most likely a certainty. So with that, let's jump into our next post here, because we have some very disturbing news, and this is from Nexta. We see that at 5 a.m. this morning, Russia tried to break through the defense line in Kharkiv, and that the attacks were repulsed by Ukraine, and the fighting of varying intensity is underway, says the Ukrainian Defense Ministry, and meanwhile, mass evacuation has begun from Volchansk and the surrounding settlements of the Kharkiv region, and locals say that they have never seen such shelling before, and that therefore it is dangerous to be in Volchansk right now, and since 3 in the morning, they've been shelled with KABs, artillery, and from MLRS, said the head of Volchansk City Military Administration. And also it says here, military media reports that the invaders launched a massive artillery and airstrikes across the entire north of the region. And down here we actually see a video of the Russian forces launching grad fire toward the city of Kharkiv. And as you can see here, the Russians are pretty much letting loose on the city of Kharkiv. They're launching grad fire like crazy, but the Ukrainians were actually ready for this. And if you'll recall, about 1 or 2 weeks ago, the Ukrainians actually redeployed forces to the city of Kharkiv to reinforce the city. So this was expected, and the Ukrainian intelligence was on top of this, and they had the forces in place to respond. So the Ukrainians were not caught off guard, and it is being dealt with as we speak. We're moving into our next post here, and this one goes to OSINT Technical. And we're getting some more news about this Kharkiv offensive by the Russians, and like we said earlier today, the Russian forces reportedly started a brand new offensive in the Kharkiv area, and Russian units pushed through the border settlement of Pilna, but took heavy Ukrainian fire just north of the town, losing at least 3 BMPs and an MTLB in Russian territory. So right here in this photo right here, there is just a ton of wreckage right here. This is all Russian equipment that has been smashed by the Ukrainians. And once again, offensives are very costly. Like, everyone knows that. So, and right here you can see how costly it is for the Russians, especially when you really have no plan. And this is what happens. All their vehicles get destroyed in one big pile. And this is not going to be all. Before it's over with, this offensive on Kharkiv is going to be extremely costly for the Russians. But with that, we're moving into our next post here. And this one goes to Null Reports. And we are beginning to hear that Zelensky is confirming the counteroffensive actions of the Russian Federation in the Kharkiv region. And according to him, as of this morning, the advance was repulsed by artillery fire, and Zelensky says, quote unquote, Our military knew about the offensive and calculated the forces, and now there is a fierce battle. So I must say once again, I'm very impressed as to the way the Ukrainians are responding to this. I'm very glad to see it, and Zelensky is definitely on top of this issue. So with that, jumping into our next post here, we have one from Fintech's News, and we're also hearing from Ukraine's Ministry of Defense that reserve units have now been sent to reinforce the Kharkiv border, so we're seeing more forces head to that region. Now, one thing that I'm concerned about is I'm wondering if this may be a ruse by Russia to basically divert forces from the front line from certain areas to the Kharkiv region, and then they might try to punch through another area while Kharkiv is under fire. That's one concern I have, and right now I'm not exactly sure how many units Ukraine has had to redeploy from certain areas to basically reinforce the Kharkiv border. So that will be something to watch in the future and see if there's any secondary offensives that happened by Russia. But with that, we're jumping into our next post here, and we're going to switch gears just a little bit to talk about this new massive aid package here. And this post is from Nexta, and we're learning from Politico that the U.S. plans to announce a new package of military aid to Ukraine worth $400 million. And the package includes new Patriot missiles, Stinger surface-to-air missiles, Bradley fighting vehicles, MRAPs, Javelin anti-armor systems, and other munitions. So once again, this is not just a filler package here. This is actually a really potent package that Ukraine needs to fight off the Russians. The Patriot missiles are super important. Pretty much everything in this package is very important. So it's a very substantive one. And I'm glad to see the U.S. is once again stepping back up after that massive aid bill was passed a short while ago, and we're once again on the steam train to basically sending all the aid that Ukraine needs to their territory. So with that, jumping into our next post here, we now have one from Max23 on Twitter. And in this post, we're seeing something somewhat laughable actually. There's been so many oil refinery attacks inside of Russia that refinery workers in Russia are quitting their jobs in mass after these Ukrainian attacks, says Newsweek. And it says after the raid on that oil refinery in March, several dozen workers of various qualifications, mainly the engineers and the chemists, left. And that's huge right there, because for one thing, Russia can't afford to lose these engineers and chemists because that's all they have. They can't source people from overseas anymore because they pretty much pissed everybody off. So this is a big deal right here. And it says right here, the plant posted at least 50 new vacancies. And the situation is similar with the employees of the Slavyansk refinery in the Krasnodar territory. And currently there's 120 new employees being sought there. So we can only assume that it's because these employees are so scared that they're going to be hit by a drone that they have to get out. And that's huge because already Russia's oil industry is hurting, and now they're going to be hurting for also qualified staff as well. So Russia's oil industry is set for an absolute collapse. Russia is going to have a serious problem when this industry actually collapses, and I'm here to see it. But with that, we're jumping into our next article, and this one goes to the Euromaidan Press. And we can see that Ukraine's Magura drones, these new drones here, have inflicted at least $500 million in losses on the Russian Black Sea Fleet, says a representative of Ukraine's defense intelligence, Yuri Yusov. Now, the Magura is a very potent drone indeed. And we've actually seen this drone right here, which you can kind of see in this photo. This drone has recently been upgraded with SAM systems, which are actual missiles on the back of the drone as well. So Ukraine is really putting a lot of their development into these Magura drones, and they're proven to be very effective. They're taking out massive multi-billion-dollar ships that Russia has. Ukraine's not putting much money into these drones, and they're getting a massive return on investment. So naturally, Ukraine is going to continue to develop these drones and go even further with them. But with that, we're moving on to our next post, and this one goes to Max23, and we can see here that the approaches to the Kerch Bridge are guarded by two Russian Project 12200 Sobol patrol boats from the Coast Guard of the FSB Border Service, and the boats designed to intercept high-speed targets and to protect the coastal zone and more. So let's take a look at the photo here, and you can see there is that high-speed patrol boat right out here in the distance, and also we have another photo as well. You can see a couple of them out here. These boats, I'm not really sure what they're supposed to be doing when they're out here, because the drones and the drone vessels that Ukraine has are the main thing that they're going to be using to send to actually hit the bridge. So I'm not sure if they're planning to use these boats as shields to the bridge or what. But apparently they think that patrolling around the bridge is at least good theater or security theater for the Russians to feel like the bridge is safe once again. I'm not really sure, but you know, the Russians have these ingenious ways of protecting stuff. They put nets around the bridges sometimes, and I don't know. Maybe they've got something figured out that we don't, but I highly doubt it. But moving on here to our next post, we have one from Nexta, and we're seeing a pretty funny video here. We can see that the caption says, "Russian patriotism came in from behind." What does that mean? Well, let's see the video and we'll figure it out. And as you can see, there's some type of parade of cars going on here with the Russian flag. And man, it's Tony. He smashed right into the back of that other car and totaled it. And I can't even really tell what these vehicles even are, to be honest with you. That looks like maybe some type of Lada or something up here. And maybe a Nissan? Is that a Skyline? I can't tell what that is. But whatever these vehicles are, they're in pretty foul shape now because Tony didn't know how to use the brakes. So once again, that Russian patriotism has come from behind once again, and these vehicles are toast. But with that, we're moving on to our last post here, and this one goes to Nexta as well, and we're learning that the AFU is preparing 10 new brigades, and some of them will be deployed to defend Kyiv, and this was announced by the commander of the ground forces, Alexander Pavluk, in an interview with The Economist, and he said, quote unquote, "The defense of Kyiv remains one of our main concerns, and no matter how difficult it is in the east, it is at the heart of Ukraine, and we know what a key role the defense of the capital will play in the future." So we're seeing Ukraine prepare for, in my opinion, the Russian summer offensive by forming these new brigades here. And also the deployment to Kyiv is probably a last resort here to make sure that nothing happens to the capital, because that is the most important place in Ukraine, is obviously the capital, and we have to make sure that is defended to the utmost security. So it looks like Ukraine is doing that indeed. But with that, that is actually our last piece of news for the day. So I hope you found this video informative, and if you have, please press the like button and give the channel a subscribe as well, because that greatly helps out the channel and we appreciate it very much. And also, if you want to support us financially, we do have a Patreon page, and the link is in the description below for that, where you can go over there and sign up and see some behind the scenes, and also help support the channel. So we once again appreciate all the Patreons, all the patrons, that is. And with that, thank you all for watching, and be sure to join us tonight at 10 p.m. Eastern for our nightly war news stream. And with that, bye-bye for now.